What's up is down, what's left is right. Chasing stars and holding you. I can't see the end, but we'll see it through. Times don't fly too high. Be sure to keep the ground in sight. Fly forever if you keep it tight. Love the world but keep the sky on your mind.
Good evening, my dear friends, but a special, special good evening to Sir Garry and to Jackie. Tonight I have the privilege of addressing you all on such a special occasion. You know, as Prime Minister, there are few things more impactful than celebrating the work of fellow Barbadians. But it is that much sweeter when not only is it the work of one of our living national heroes, but it is that of the greatest cricketer the world has ever seen. The Right Honourable Sir Garfield St Albans Sobers. By name alone, you were intended to achieve greatness, Sir Garry. I am so happy to be able to deliver these remarks at the launch of your new foundation. I'm sure it is no secret or surprise that I, like many other Barbadians and Caribbean people, share a burning passion for cricket. A passion ignited by legends of the game, and really, you, more than most others, have inspired us. I wish today I could be wearing that collar up just as you so iconically represented across the world. In fact, the truth is that this passion is also the cause of my sole regret tonight of not being there. I so wanted to be there, but regrettably, affairs of state do not allow me to be. But I do the next best thing. I'm doing a beam me up Scotty in this video. It is my true belief that this, the launch of the Sir Garry Sobers Foundation, marks an important junction, not just in sports, but in the social development of our young people. Sports offers an avenue for young people to channel their interests and energies into a positive activity which can make for them both life and livelihood. And Sir Garry, you represent that as a shining example. The truth is, sports allowed you and allows all others to be global citizens with Bajan or Caribbean roots. At a time when our world faces the stresses of multiple geopolitical crises, our young people in particular, those who may not come from backgrounds that allow them a lot of options, are at the forefront, and they feel directly the impact of this uncertain world in which we live in. I know your efforts to support young underprivileged cricketers will prove to be a turning point in the lives of so many young people, countless across the world. So Garry, I'm as confident in this as I was any time as I saw you step up to the crease to ball or bat and deliver for Barbados or the West Indies. In my view, this may well be your greatest innings. Your life's work and dedication to your people, the game, and the development of both cannot be questioned. It should only be admired and emulated, and I shall continue to ensure that we all do so from this little rock of yours that you call home. Again, I wish you and Jackie every blessing on this most important night. Hugs and kisses, hugs and kisses. Wish I could be there with you. But nevertheless, we will see you soon again. God bless you all and take care. Thank you.
Good night to our viewers here in the Caribbean. Good morning to those in India and in Pakistan. and in the rest of the world, good afternoon to you all. Welcome to Great Moments in West Indies Cricket with Sir Garry Sobers. As you see before, we got greetings from the Honorable Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, and she talked about the great Garry Sobers. And I have with me here my guest, Riza Abbas Ali, and also Janet Patel, two gentlemen that knows and interact with Sir Garry Sobers and know some great things about him, who will also share their thoughts and views about the great man, Sir Garry Sobers, for us tonight. Viewers, I want to appreciate you for joining us tonight and for taking time out and for allowing us in your house and wherever you are. We are happy that you tune into this show and this great moment with Sir Garry Sobers tonight. We thank you for being friends with us here at West Indies Cricket Development Academy. We are planning on touring the USA next year, and we also would love for you to donate to the cause of us going to the US. When you look in the comments section, you will see how you can do that, and also on our page, you will see how you can do that. Also, I want to inform you that planning here touring the USA West Indies next year, and that's the reason why we are featuring Sir Garry to the cause of us going to done a whole lot for West Indies cricket and is responsible for the rise of West Indies cricket. It was under his watch that the West Indies really transitioned into a champion beating side. And I just want to now ask our guest, Janet Patel, who will be leaving us pretty soon for another engagement, to just give us his opening remarks. And after that, Riza Abbas Ali will follow after him. Go ahead, Mr. Patel.
Good evening, all. This is Jatin Patel from USA, and I'm a part of this academy, and I'm fortunate to speak about Sir Garfield Sobers. I had a one-time interaction, and I can say as a human being, is the nicest person you want to have next to you. For the West Indies, it's a huge thing to take it as a granted. It's a natural talent. But top of that, if you look at his history when he entered the West Indies cricket and left the West Indies cricket when he retired, the West Indies cricket has dramatically changed from nowhere to championship era end. It was a foundation work started when he was playing actively. Absolutely, the things has changed over last 5 decades. And nowadays is all about T20. I can remind you why the Garry Sobers is a great. He is the first man to score 6 sixes in English county. He had a no deadline. He had a no number of overs left or we have to rush into. But the biggest thing I point out is here, even in today's world in T20, we all know that how hard it is to hit those 6 sixes, where he did it. And that is a simple example of his caliber. He could have been one of the best all-rounder in today's world for T20 if he had an opportunity to play. But going back again, that was the finest all-rounder West Indies has produced. And he was the leading all-rounder until he retired. Before we see plenty of other folks like Kapil Dev, you can add the Imran Khan, you can add the Richard Hadley from New Zealand, then you can carry on with the Ian Botham from England. And then top of that, these are just leading all-rounders. But we had more than 100 all-rounders in last 50, 60 years, I can say. But what the Sobers did, It's just because he was the sobers. Not only that, during his career, he made everything possible so West Indies can become a good cohesive team. When we say cohesive, means it's a good combination of batsmen, all-rounders, batters, wicket keepers. It's a one unit you need to become a champion. And that is what the foundation work he has done it. Absolutely. I believe he is about 86 or something at this point. I seen his last birthday's video and I can say we are all fortunate to have this legend living with us and we are able to see him live. That's the biggest thing. To me, since I born in 61, I will say I'm following heavily West Indies cricket since 1971 when Gavaskar made that history. Till now, everyone knows that I really and deeply concerned about the West Indies cricket and current situation going on. To be honest with you, Gary Sauber is just a one key example to begin with. And later on, what the leader he has set for the West Indies, other legendary cricketers. Remember, if today's count, if we counting West Indies, whether it's a bowling, batting, fielding, catching, it starts with the Gary Sobers. Look at those records. Everyone came after and beat the Gary Sobers record. So it's a foundation work. The first step, he made it. The impression lasts longer. It's being a history, and I will say you may see plenty of West Indies all-rounder, but no one can be like Sobers. Not only that, with this T20 momentum going and the way the West Indies performing, sad to say, I don't see the kids' desire in the streets in West Indies to see that he has something like, I want to be a Sobers. That charisma has been gone now. And that is the point we as academy has to look forward and instill that intent where somebody can keep it intact to become a greatest all-rounder. Absolutely, we don't want to be like Sabers, but we can start with it. I want to be Sabers. And once you set that tone, you need to go for it. I want to be better than Sabers. And that is what Living Legend has set for great foundation work for us. I can speak and talk, keep continue, but I will say compare it. Numbers don't lie. Records don't give false impression. Everything is out there, and every kid out there in West Indies or some other cricketers are looking into. Look at it. We need to go for the West Indian glory. Cricket is in our blood. Cricket we use as entertainment. I remember I was listening to the radio commentary until 82 because we don't have TV in India. And every time, you believe it or not, whenever they play in Bridgetown, Barbados, I stick my head with the radio all 5 days for two reasons. The greatest fight is coming from that West Indies island. And not only that, people used to make that noise with the sound, music. It's a celebration. And believe it or not, people are desperately looking for right now the personal goals and agenda, like a money, achieve something. But when you play like Sobers, just for fun, for the passion he had, and that is what he played without stress. And that's what the performance comes from. You need to have the proper mindset. And we need to learn from that legend. To be honest with you, Barbados has given us lots of cricketers, plenty of them, but Sobers is one of its own class. You can distinguish a different list for the batters, opening batters, middle order batters, or some bowlers. But hey, the list starts with the Sobers. That's the only thing I can say. And at this point, again, Thanks for inviting me and speaking for Sobers. I can keep continue, but we have to send the message clearly. Legend is still there. We need to get whatever the help we can. His advice is not about gaining something. At least you can improve something, whether it's a skill wise, technical wise, or as a just being a human character wise. It's a very important value you can obtain from legend. With that, I will say good night, all. And that's all I have for today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Janet Patel, for that great tribute to Mr. Garry Sobers, the living legend of West Indies cricket. Before I allow Riza Abbas Ali to come in, a great cricket historian here in the Caribbean from the beautiful island of Trinidad and Tobago, our producer, Winston Amon, is also from the great island of Trinidad and Tobago. And I just want to big up the viewers of Trinidad and Tobago as well. I want to also big up the West Indies Cricket Board Vice President and President of Trinidad and Tobago Cricket Board, who has joined us also, Mr. Asim Basara. And it's great that you would have tuned into this show. I want to big up our sponsors from India, Azari Sportswear. I want to thank them for coming on board and for being sponsors on this show as well. I also want to big up Winston Aman On Location streaming service. Anytime you need anything to stream in Trinidad and Tobago, make sure you reach out to On Location streaming, and Winston and his team will take very good care of you. And lastly, our sponsors that I want to big up is Omega ICWI Cricket. Mr. Patel knows a lot more than I about them, and Mr. VJ there in India. They are doing extremely wonderful things for cricket in India, especially in the Mumbai area. And I'm happy for them, and we are happy that they came on board to sponsor our show tonight. I want to give our guest and cricket historian the floor now to speak about Sir Garry Sobers. Riza Abbas Ali, cricket historian and retired teacher, also taught at the University of the West Indies about West Indies cricket and a lot more in those in Trinidad life he has impacted and have allowed to understand the game of cricket. And we are happy that he chose to be on our show tonight. Take it away, Riza.
Well, thank you very much, Junior, for that introduction. Mr. Patel, Winston, and all our guests from all over the Caribbean and the world. It is really a pleasure to be here tonight on your medium, to talk about a great one, Mr. Patel. There's no other man on this earth, who could be as good as Garry Sobers as an all-rounder. And just before I start, because I'm going to, do a PowerPoint presentation, and hopefully that, this will be very interesting to all of you who are on board. In my first test match, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, which was back in 1971, I was at the Queen's Park Oval, the second test. Garry Sobers was captain. And this was, of course, the second test, the debut of Sunil Gavaskar at the Queen's Park Oval. And three things I remember, ladies and gentlemen. Sobers on the field. This is when I was just, 10 years old. Sobers on the field. And I was there on the first day of the first test match. This was the second test, I believe. And I remember Saeed Abid Ali bowling down Roy Fredericks with a ratter, as we say, a very low delivery. And I see Mr. Patel is nodding his head, and he was bowled down for a duck, first ball. And the second thing I remember is the batting of Charles Allen Davis, known as Charlie Davis. Scored 71 and 74, not out in that match. West Indies lost the match, of course, and the series 1-0. And then, of course, my third and not necessarily my last but it was an everlasting memory to see the captain on the field. And that man was Garfield St. Auberon Sobers. And that is just the three imbibing memories as a youngster at the age of 10 years old at the Queen's Park Oval. And I have followed his career, until his retirement in 1974, right here at the Queen's Park Oval, Mr. Patel, his last test match alongside the great Rohan Kanai. So I would like now, to start, hopefully, my presentation. It should be around 15, 16, 17 minutes. And I hope that you will tune in on the great G.S. Sobers. So let me see if I can do this, Winston. Pretty good. Share screen. Right. Are we on, Winston? Hello? Are you hearing me?
Go ahead.
Right, good man.
Yeah,
All
we
right.
are hearing you clearly.
Great man, great man. So here we are, the legend of West Indies cricket, Sir Garry Sobers. So just to tell you on his background, before we define, I have some Barbados. My research indicates that he was the fifth of 6 children: George, Greta, Ellis, Gerald, and himself, Garry, and Saul or Cecil. I'm not too sure how many are alive or not, but I believe the 2 boys have passed on. At an early age, he was unfortunate for him at the age of 5 to lose his father at sea, as I read it. He was a seaman. I think, I read that the Germans bombed the boat. I can't recall exactly where exactly that was, but in the Caribbean, but it was a Canadian boat. And therefore, he lost his father at an early age. What we find about Sir Garry at this early age, he was attracted to cricket so early. I read about, him using a tennis ball to practice, day in, day out. Cricket was his blood. And what we mentioned also is that he, at the early age, he started to play with big boys, as I read. And I read that, of course, Worrell, Weeks, and Walcott, the 3 Ws, were, of course, the famous 3 triumvirate of Worrell, Weeks, and Walcott. They were about 10, 11, 12 years ahead of him. And he would, of course, be looking at them. It was no secret that Everton Weeks, as I read, was his hero. So at an early age, he was exposed to cricket, and to the big players. And what I read also, that he would go down to the Kensington Oval and look at these big senior players practice and play cricket, see their shot making, see how they perfected their art. So he learned from observation, really. He didn't really have any coach, ladies and gentlemen, but it was just by observation. And if I may add exactly that, this is how the cricketers of those 40s and 50s and 60s, they did not have really any coaches, but they learned from the series, from their seniors. So definition of Garry Sobers is my first panel. Now there are hundreds and hundreds of definitions. I just pulled 2. C.L.R. James, 1901 to 1989, the world-renowned historian, writer, socialist, described Sobers as a living embodiment of centuries of tortured history. The West Indian cricketer, not merely a cricketer from the West Indies. And Hanif Muhammad said, and I read this somewhere, but I can't give you the exact source, but I know I read it several years ago. Hanif Muhammad, 1958, of course, he was down here with the Pakistan team, and that is the same, of course, series that Garry Sobers broke Hutton's record of 365. Hanif Muhammad said, or was quoted as saying, Sobers was sent by God to play cricket on earth. It is the most significant quote I would have read and heard and seen in the 62 years of my whole life. Sobers was sent by God to play cricket on earth. Let's move on. I want to show up front, you know, the record of Garry Sober's batting record. And then we'll go further in terms of other things. Sober's batting record, as you recall, that he made his debut in 1954 against England and Jamaica, and he played his last test match in 1974. Now, if you watch here and on these panels here, watch Australia, 19 tests, 1,510 runs, the highest score of 168.43.34. And you all see it in front of you. He played a total of 92 tests, 8,032 runs, 365 his highest score, an average of 57.78. With the exception of New Zealand, of which he played 12 tests, of course, an average of 23.76, and he scored 300s, 100, my error. You see his average from 43, 60, 83, 89, and I would suspect his Pakistan average would be higher by virtue of that 365 not out. A total of 26 hundreds. And most of those hundreds, of course, were big hundreds. 168, 226, 198 against India, 142 against New Zealand, and that was back in 1972, 2 years before his retirement. Now, his first-class record is even more stunning. A total of, 383 matches, 28,000 runs, again, 365 would be the highest score, an average of 54.87, 86 hundreds and 1043 wickets. Let me add here, let me just check my notes here, that Sobers played during his career, which was 20 plus years, about 14 first-class teams. But here, what I put here or added or deducted is the main teams and main scoring points of which the teams he was associated with. He is associated, of course, the West Indies test side, which is 93 tests, as you could see here, right there. All right. The Barbados, he played 30 matches. South Australia, 26, he was captain. Nottinghamshire, 107. And I have playing for the West Indies, of course, when he was on tour. He played 91 tests for 54, 64 runs. 219 highest score, an average of 50, 1,400s. But look at these stunning averages as a first-class player. 54, of course, overall, 383 matches, and that is the deduction, 93, 30, 26, 107, and 91. And look at these averages. It's stunning. It's unbelievable. 57.78, of course, so this stats record. 75.96 playing for Barbados, 62.95 playing for South Australia, 48.89 playing for Nottinghamshire. And may I add, he started playing for Nottinghamshire in the English county around the late 60s, early 70s. He started to play for South Australia just after the Western Tour of Australia in 1960. Between in just about 60, 61 up to mid-60s, he played for South Australia. Amazing, amazing statistical batting record. And of course, on the right column, I have the amount of wickets that he, of course, captured. A total of 1,043 wickets. And you know, my friends, ladies and gentlemen, he had this, of course, this variety. Left arm, medium pace, orthodox, Chinaman, googly. He was a 3 and 4 all in one, Mr. Junior. A man of so much, so much ability, so much craft. G.S. Sobers was 3 and 1, he was 4 and 1. Of course, on my right side there, you have his wickets, 233, an average of 34.43, a best of 6 for 73, 1968 against Australia. Let's move on. Test captaincy record. We know a little more. We should know about his captaincy record. Of course, during this started in March 1965 to April 1972. He took over from Frank Worrell, my ladies and gentlemen. The last series Frank Worrell's captain was back in England, of course, in 1963. And Sobers took over the captaincy against the Australian side in the home series against Australia. And if I remember correct, that was the first time the West Indies won a series against Australia, in the West Indies or otherwise. So Sobers captain from March 65 to April 1972. From my table here, you would see that out of the 39 matches he captained, 20 was drawn under his captaincy. And that is not too bad a record, I think. but you watch it there, 10, 13, 8, 8, 39, 1, 3, 3, 2, 1, 9, lost 4, 4, 1, 1, 10, drew 3, 6, 5, 6, 20, 20 drawn. Another topic could be, of course, unfolded about, the effectiveness of Sober's captaincy as a leader, but we will not really go into that particular aspect now, and that could be subject to another discussion. But we see from those statistics that he was, of course, he held his own, and while there would have been some, is what you call controversies, especially in the draw in that particular match against England in 1968 at Port of Spain when he declared early. I think Garry Sobers held his own as captain of the West Indies. As captain, he scored 1100s for the West Indies, 1100s, and I have it detailed there. And you could see a lot of, big scores. 161, 163 England, 174. And that 161, 163, and 174, that was Sober's series in 1966 against England in England, where he averaged over 100 and scored over 700 runs on that 1966 tour of England. And then we have Australia, 200s, 3, India, New Zealand, 1, a total of 1100 as captain. Let's move on. Career highlights. Oh my gosh. Now, I could have probably picked up about 17, 20, 30, 40 highlights of Garry Sobers. But just to give you a little snapshot of what I thought, might have been, quite interesting and quite fascinating. I did tell you at the top of where he was born and his background with his family. And then his first class debut, I mentioned that. Test debut, as you see there, March 30th, 1954, at the age of 17 years, 245 days. That would have been one of the youngest ever captains in the history of Test cricket. I believe sometime, I think after that, Mushtaq Mohammed of Pakistan would have been a debutant. Sorry, he would have been a debutant at 16. But I did not look at the youngest captains ever in the history of Test cricket. But certainly Sobers, not as captain, but as a debut, my mistake, at 17 years, 245 days, would have been one of the youngest debutant. I think his countryman, Derek Seeley, he would have debuted around 16 years plus. World record 365 against Pakistan, of course, is one of his highlights of his career in the 17th Test match, March 1958. And then, of course, as Mr. Patel had mentioned, on August 31st, 1968, he became the first man in the history of international cricket to hit 6 sixes in a single over. That was Nottinghamshire versus Glamorgan. August 31st, 1968, the bowler, unfortunate bowler, was Malcolm Nash. Scored 76 in that match, or that first innings. Knighted in 1975 by the Queen of England. Proclaimed National Hero of Barbados in 1998. In 2000, he was chosen as one of Wisden's Cricketers of the Century. In 2000, I think the others, if I remember correct, would have been Bradman, of course. I think Shane Warne made that list. But you can't ask any more accolades and write so much accolades. It would take me another 5 days to write all the accolades of Sir G.S. Sobers. Inducted in the ICC Cricket Hall of Fame in 2009. Now, where did I meet Garry Sobers? I met before this photo. I met him before, and that would have been close to probably 10 years. At the Queen's Park Oval again. But this was at the Queen's Park Oval, and this would have been before COVID, 6, 7 years ago. I think it was, the Prime Minister of Barbados was there. So it would have been, it would have been not too long ago. And I went up to him and, this is, I have a booklet of his and he autographed it for me. And I went back, he was very, very humble in my meeting with him. And a gentleman of of course, of uniqueness, of style, of charisma, of character, it was unbelievably, and I would say to ladies and gentlemen, it was one of, or if it was the biggest highlight of my cricketing career. We talked briefly about his career. I mentioned the 254 against Australia, January 1972 in Australia, playing for the rest of the world against Australia. I said, Sir Garry, whenever I look at that innings, and hopefully we could see a little glimpse of it later on, I said, it forever etches in my memory. And he said simply 2 words to me: thank you, thank you. Well, after that's 4 words, but he said 2, thank you. Let's move on. Lara meets Sobers. I think, of course, Garry and Lara are, of course, similar in style, high backlift, and Lara is playing under 19 cricket at the age of 14, as I have it there, and scored 100 in an under 19 match. I think it was at Fatima College. And after the 100, he said, I knew I had a chance in the game. A couple of years later, he met Sir Garry for the first time at the school tournament in Barbados, chatted with the legend. He had a liking for my style, and that was enough to motivate any youngster. Those were the key moments in my early career, Brian Lara states. And I would think for all our young cricketers, it is incumbent, I think it is a good thing that when we learn and see and hear and read about the legends of cricket, of West Indies cricket, it cannot be words that would be wasted or experiences that could be wasted. I think that was one of the motivating forces for Brian Lara. And if you recall, ladies and gentlemen, Garry Sobers was at the edge of his, I think he's in, of course, not I think, and in Antigua, when Lara broke his own record, that is Sobers' record. Garry Sobers was present there to celebrate with Brian Charles Lara. Lara, of course, highest scorer of test runs for the West Indies and most test hundreds of 34. And BC Lara, no doubt, would have patterned his style of cricket on GS Sobers. This was taken from Caribbean Cricket, the vintage collection, posted on Facebook on August 2020. I'm coming down to the end. Alan Davidson, of course, the great Australian all-rounder, recollects, the Thai test match, December 1916, Brisbane. And just to say it, he said, in part, this bloke could just do anything on a field, on a cricket field, except umpire. That 132 made at Brisbane, which was the first test, and of course, the first ever Thai test in the history of test cricket, was unforgettable innings by Garry Sobers. It's 10 tests, 100, 132. And I don't think that, I could be wrong, it's on YouTube, but it was one of the great innings again in Australia and the world to see. And Alan Davidson was no ordinary player. 44 test matches, 186 wickets at the average of 20.53. So when Davidson talked about GS Sobers, then he's talking something very, predicated on his own experience. West Hall is there with me. And in that match, I think West Hall had a very good game. I think he took 9 wickets in that match. West Hall, W.W. Hall, Wesley Winfield Hall, one of the greatest bowlers, fast bowlers, of course, ever seen in West Indian Test cricket and in the world. And West Hall is still alive. Now, this is my last, my last panel. And this is, when you look at this particular innings, and this was Sobers at the age of 35. What was happening here in 1972 in Australia? The rest of the world was playing Australia. And there was a series that was supposed to take place between South Africa and Australia, in Australia, but that was cancelled because of South Africa's continued presence and mindset with apartheid. So that I think it was Don Bradman himself who organized this series between West of the World and Australia. And this was the 3rd test. Now, when I say test, ladies and gentlemen, it was not an official test, but it was called a test. And this was one of the, of course, what we call magna opuses of Garry Sobers, 254. And when you hear Don Bradman, who's on the left of the screen, talk about this match, and he is running out or has run out of vocabulary to describe Sobers 254. And there was this ongoing banter and exchanges, hot exchanges between Dennis Lilly, the great Dennis Lilly, and Garry Sobers. And in this particular match at Melbourne, Sobers was dismissed for a duck by Lilly. And even the previous match, he was dismissed for a previous duck by Dennis Lilly. So it was this, I wouldn't say revenge, but it was a great bowler against a great batsman. And with 33 fours and 2 sixes, with this 254, at the end of the day, Sobers was, of course, glorified, as I mentioned, by Don Bradman, who ended, of course, with a test average of 99.96 in 52 test matches. And Lilly is saying, or has said, I read this in a book here or in the internet, one of the best deliveries I sent down to him, a Yorker with the second new ball, came back past me as though it had been fired from a cannon. It had crashed into the fence under the sideboard before I had been able to fault in my run. So before Lilly completed his run-up, that ball ricocheted from the boundary back onto the field. The shot, as I said, sounded like a cannon. And this is 35-year-old Garry Sobers at his ultimate best, coming down to the end of his career. Who at a 35 could play such an innings? And the man who said, he said it, Donald George Bradman, ladies and gentlemen, said it was the greatest ever innings ever seen in Australia. At that time, of course. And 20 years later, was it 1972 to 1992, we saw Lara's epic 277 at Sydney, which could have been the next greatest innings ever seen in Australia. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Riza Abbas Ali. This is my email. This is my telephone number. It has been a pleasure sitting down here. I hope if I have made any errors or omissions, may Almighty God forgive me for those errors and omissions. But I am happy that I was given the opportunity by Mr. Junior. I call him the local Michael Holden. And as I said, the history of Garry Sobers. He's 87 years old. And then I conclude again with the famous quote of Hanif Muhammad. Sobers was sent by God to play cricket on earth. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Remarkable. Remarkable. Mention again before I ask you another question, Riza Ahmed Ali. I just want to big up our main sponsor tonight, which is On Location Streaming. Anywhere in Trinidad that you are and need an event to be streamed, remember to contact Winston Aman, and he and his team will give you the best streaming service there is on the Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. We also want to big up Azari Sports, where our uniform sponsor here at West Indies Cricket Development Academy. We want to thank all the viewers that are live and tune in to our show tonight. I want to big up those in Jamaica, those in the United Kingdom, and also in Barbados, in the British Virgin Islands, in Aruba, in Saudi Arabia, in India, in Pakistan, all of you, and all the other countries that you are tuning in from the great United States, all the other countries that you are tuning in from. If I did not mention you, please forgive me, but you're all loved and welcome on this program about the legend, a moment with Sir Garry Sobers. Riza, when we look at Garry Sobers and his exploit in Australia, not many batsmen go to Australia and dominate in the fashion that Garry Sobers would have dominated. And we have seen throughout his career and towards the end of his public life in terms of his engagement with the public, though they are limited now. He was there at the ARG when Lara was about to break his record. How beautiful of a gesture that could have been from a man that would have done it before, and a youngster that is now coming on the scene for real, taking the baton from Sobers. Sobers in a genuine way gave the baton to Brian Charles Lara. I think that is responsible for his rise in world cricket. Your views on that?
Oh, definitely. There's no question about that. And as I mentioned, what is unique about two of them, they seem to have the same, almost the same batting style with a high back lift. And those shots, I mean, the shots that are displayed by Garry and Lara almost duplicate. But again, as I mentioned in my presentation, this is what, I mean, it was such a magnanimous gesture by Sir Garry to be on the field of play when Lara is about to break his record. And that was a signature moment for West Indies cricket and world cricket. You know, I mean, two West Indians of the same caliber. And I think that would have been Brian's, I mean to say, one of his moments that he would forever cherish.
Yes. And we have seen pictures of Lara going to Barbados and actually going at the home of Sir Garry Sobers, both of them, the three of them really, because anywhere you see Sir Garry, now you have seen his lovely wife along with him, and Lara was in the middle of them standing at the home. And I think both of them shared a pretty awesome relationship, not looking at the rivalry that always exists between Barbados and Trinidad and Tobago. For Garry and Lara, there was no rivalry at no time at all, because we have seen countless of pictures of these two together. And I once again boldly say that Sir Garry passed the baton to Brian Charles Lara. And if Lara was on tonight, you would have mentioned that Sir Garry means a lot to him. And, you know, you see the Prime Minister sending a video tonight to talk about at the start when we finish and you go back to watch, you will see the Honorable Prime Minister, Mia Mottley, sending a video to appreciate this man, Sir Garry Sobers. He means so much to Caribbean people, and he's revered there in Trinidad and Tobago because a lot of his exploits were at the Queen's Park Oval.
Yes, no doubt about it. He has left his mark, indelible mark, all over the world. And as I mentioned, now he's 87 years old, Junior. And I recently saw an interview with him, I think, when he met Virat Kohli in the series here a couple of months, the 2 test matches. And Kohli, I mean, he was overwhelmed. You know, that picture, I think you have it on Facebook or Messenger. Overwhelmed to meet Sir Garry. The Indians were overwhelmed. And I suppose all other countries or people would have met him would be overwhelmed. And 87 not out. He still has the faculties, but we got to pick his brain. And I hope I've never interviewed him. I mean, spoken with him one-on-one, except of course meeting him briefly at the Queen's Park Oval on 2 occasions. But you know, to find out more about what worked for him, what were some of his batting techniques, we could see it. I mean, in of course in the videos. But what was his secret? What was his preparation like? We have to get that from him, of course, before he goes to the great beyond. And I'm hoping, with your help, Junior, I could get that opportunity to interview him. I'm hoping to get back in sports television soon here in Trinidad and Tobago. So I'm just anxious for that moment to occur with the great G.S. Sobers.
Absolutely. We'll certainly work on that, because at the moment we are also live on the island of Barbados, a very beautiful island. And at every game that plays at the international level and also in the CPL, Sir Garry felt it very necessary to be at the ground. And he has a very close relationship with Jason Holder, who would have rose to the #1 all-rounder position several times during his career so far. So it just goes to show that the influence and what Sir Garry has within him to pass on to young players, make them the best in the world. And we just want to say to the youngsters in Trinidad, in Barbados, in Jamaica, in all over the Caribbean, read about Sir Garry Sobers. Go back over and watch this presentation about Sir Garry and look at his stats and try to take a page out of his book and do what you see Sir Garry does, because it will do wonders for your career. He had put a dent and a mark in Brian Charles Lara. He would have done it with Jason Holder. The man is a genius. The man is the best at what he does. And I would say, like the Pakistani, that Sir Garry Sobers was really sent by God to play the game of cricket, because he excelled at it, and he excelled at it with tremendous tenacity. And when you look at 6 sixes, as you witnessed in the 2007 World Cup, when the South African would have gotten it, and when you look the other day against Sri Lanka, when the former captain from the Twin Island Republic, Pollard, got the 6 sixes as well. Garry Sobers actually done that first. He set the trend first. So Sir Garry Sobers is a truly great of West Indies cricket. And we want to say to Sir Garry at the moment that we here at the Development Academy love and appreciate you. And that's the reason why we take time out tonight in shedding some light on you. There was a lot of people that wanted to join this show tonight, but we only had space for our 2 guests who would have come tonight to be with us and to shed light about you, sir. But you are loved in the Caribbean. We appreciate what you would have done for West Indies cricket and what you would have done for the youngsters in our academy and in other academies that are coming up, and the trend that you would have set for them and to set them on a path now of growth. We certainly appreciate you, sir, and we pay great homage to you tonight. And we thank you for what you have done for West Indies cricket and also for the island of Barbados. Riza Ahmed Ali, I want to thank you for joining tonight. I also want to thank Janet Patel for joining us tonight. We want to thank our main sponsor, On Location Streaming. Anywhere in Trinidad and Tobago, you have a wedding event, funeral, cricket, football, just about anything that you need to be on here, please contact Winston Aman and he will execute for you, he along with his competent team. Also, remember, when you need cricket gears, cricket uniforms, anything that has to do with cricket in terms of uniforms and so forth, please contact Azari Sportswear and they will give you the best in the market. They are of the best quality and they are sponsors of the West Indies Cricket Development Academy, and we certainly thank them for being on board with us. Thank each and every one tonight for joining, and we appreciate you. We now leave you with a video of the greatest innings. It has voted as the greatest innings ever of Sir Garry Sobers and really in world cricket against in Australia and against Australia, he was playing for the World 11. We leave you with that video tonight, and we thank you for joining us. Goodbye.
Let's see that.
Going towards the boundary. It will beat every fieldsman. It's slowing down. Jenner's after it. It's going to be close. Jenner may just reach this. They could run for, and the ball might just win. It does. And the crowd here, a huge crowd, cheered that ball on all the way and into the fence for 4 more. Sabres 94. The World 11, 6 for 273. Where's that gone? It's out towards the boundary. 4 more. O'Keefe couldn't get near it. A magnificent shot. Sabres 98. Well, O'Keefe had no more than 15 yards to run. He had no hope at all. That flew off the bat like lightning past the umpire who's standing at point. Sabres his 16th 4. He's 98. Intercarb 4. 6 for 277. And that's his 100. And a standing ovation.
Wrapped on the pad, and there's an appeal, and he's been given out. Intercar, LBW, bowled Watson, 15. And the World 11 lose their 7th wicket at 319. The not-out batsman is Sobers on 125. Intercarb, LBW, to the bowling of Watson for 15. The World 11 in their second innings, with their score at 7 for 344, have established a lead of 243 with 3 wickets in hand.
Sabres on strike. Massey the bowler. That's the ball. That's the one we're talking about. Sabres has a go at those outside the off stump. He's played that shot, not so much the drive, but chasing a ball outside the off stump 2 or 3 times this morning. And there it is, down through the slip area, into the fence for 4. It wasn't a catch by any means. Even if there was a 3rd slip there, it wouldn't have been caught. But 4 to Sabres off the edge. O'Keefe bowling. And in the air, lofted dust, could be 6. Beautiful shot. That's a 6. Well, that brings the 400 up. Beautiful off drive by Sabres. He just moved straight underneath it, and away it went, clearing the fence by 10 yards. The 400 up in 500 minutes. Australia now will want 300 to win from now on, 300 plus. Sabres 172. Again, it's in the air. It may be over the boundary again, over the other side. 6 more. O'Keefe to Peter Pollock. And yes, through the field, 4 runs, I'd say. Massey and Watson after it, but the ball just reaching the fence. Yes, 4 more to Pollock. 7 for 413. Jenner to Sabres. And that should be 4. It's going wide of O'Keefe. Beautifully hit off the back foot. Into the fence it goes now. 4 more. Sabres 191. And more runs, probably 4 more. O'Keefe may get this. It's going to pull up in the outfield. It's slowing right down. And they're just walking back for the second. Will they go for 3? Yes, they will. And Sabres moves on to 196. And through the field, that's it. 4 runs. Sabres 202. A performance surely which must rank way up high on a list of great innings on this ground. 202, 24 fours, 2 sixes, only 329 minutes. That last shot, absolutely effortless, no effort at all. And there's some more. 4 more again, mid-wicket bow or square leg boundary. Sabres 206, Pollock 48, and that's the 450 up. 7 for 451.
Down to fine leg. Beating him into the fence. It's Massey, the fieldsman. Sabres looking for that single to give his teammate his 50. There it is. 50 runs and well played. Well played by Peter Pollock, and getting a very warm round of applause from this excellent crowd. 7 for 482. Peter Pollock, 50. Sobers, 235. Magnificent shot, and Sobers does not move from the crease. Classical cover drive. And the ball literally flowed from the bat and sped across the carpet to the fence. An edge. It's going to the fence for 4. The Australian skipper Ian Chappell picking the ball up, and that brings up the 500. 7 for 500, the 500 coming up in 635 minutes, and Sobers now 249. Sobers, who has never scored a century on this ground prior to this innings. Magnificent shot, and that's 4 runs. There's his 250. Garry Sobers, 253 not out.
But the majesty of his innings is beyond my command of English.
He could be out. Doug Walters, caught it mid-on. Garry Sobers leaves the ground. And the crowd is standing to applaud Garry Sobers as he leaves the ground. Caught Walters, bowled Greg Chappell, 254. I'll say no more, just listen to that crowd.
Well, that superb knock, in effect, won the game for the rest of the world.